right. Welcome everybody. We're back with our Let's Talk About Labor podcast. Um, Today, this podcast is a collaboration. For those of you who are not familiar with the podcast, this is a collaboration between the University of Tennessee and Gap Connections, and aims to help you connect with farmers in Tennessee and other surrounding states, specifically to talk about their experiences using various U.S. temporary foreign visa programs to address their labor needs, as well as general strategies to overcome the labor challenges they are facing. We also try to connect you with individuals from the government and nonprofit organizations who could help you better navigate options related to addressing your labor needs. My name is Margarita Velantia, and I'm a professor in the Department of Agricultural and Resource Economics at the University of Tennessee.
My name is Jane Chadwell. I'm the Executive Director of Gap Connections, which is a nonprofit based here in Knoxville that works with farmers across the Southeast on labor issues.
My name is Amy Rochkis. I'm the Training and Resource Coordinator for Gap Connections. And so today I'd like to introduce our guests, Jackie Edwards, Joey Knight, and Dalton Armstrong. Thank you all for joining us today. So we're going to try to kind of introduce everyone, and I'm going to start with Jackie, put her on the hot seat first. But Jackie, would you tell us a little bit about your farm operation, crops and livestock that you might raise, the type of workers you're hiring, and how many workers you're hiring?
Sure. So we are Corn Silk Farms, and we are located in Middle Tennessee, right on the southern Kentucky border. We farm in 5 counties. We are a grain farm, so we grow corn, wheat, and soybeans. We're a family partnership. We're in a partnership with my father-in-law and my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, my husband, and myself. We're fortunate in that several of our children have come on board and work with us. So we've got my son, my nephew, a nephew-in-law, and then others that, kind of help out during harvest and planting and stuff, and then some other random family members. We have about 15 full-time employees, and that includes our H-2As. Right now, we have 6 H-2A workers from Mexico that are here for 10 months. And then during harvest, we run up to 25 people help to truck and stuff. So, yeah, that's a little bit about us.
Well, and I think, Jackie, you mentioned to me you also get H-2A workers from South Africa. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, we do. We had one last year, and we've got another one that's on his way right now. So
okay, great. So Joey, I'm going to turn it over to you. Joey, tell us a little bit about your farm operation and the type of labor you hire and how many.
I'm Joey Knight. I raise tobacco and cows. Have usually put out about 70, 80 acres tobacco, and I've got 8 H-2A workers, all from Mexico, Nayarit to be specific, and that's about it. We do tobacco and cows.
I'm sure that keeps you busy, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Joey. All right, Dalton, tell us a little bit about your family farming operation and the type of labor you hire and the number of those workers you hire.
Yeah, I'm Dalton Armstrong. I'm from Orlando, Tennessee, and kind of like Joey, we do tobacco and cows is our main deal. We have 9 guys at the harvest time of the season. They're all from Mexico, and yeah, kind of like Joey, that's what we do. That's us.
All right. Well, so all 3 of you are using the H-2A program, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And so do any of you hire local labor, or is it all H-2A labor?
Mine's all H-2A.
Same for us. We have in the past, but it's all H-2A this year.
Okay.
We do hire local labor. It's getting harder and harder to find local labor. So that's why we have been growing our H-2A program over the last couple of years.
All right. So Jackie, I'm going to go back to you. How did you discover H-2A workers through South Africa?
So some friends of ours, some other neighbor farmers, had some South African H-2A workers, and they had had a lot of success with that. And so we just thought where we were needing more operators, and it's just hard with the language barrier with our Mexican H-2A workers to put them in operating positions sometimes that require a lot of technical software and things like that. Um, so that was what prompted us to try South African H-2As. Last year, it was our first year with one, and he didn't come back this year. We've got another fella that's coming, and he's looking pretty promising. And the South Africans, they seem to want to come because they want to learn how to run the big equipment and use the software and stuff like that. Whereas the Mexicans are coming, it's been our experience more that they're coming to help. They'll do anything. They just are coming to help, take care of their families and stuff. They aren't as concerned about learning big agriculture.
Now, I want you guys to walk us through the process from the time you plan on how many H2O workers you want to bring for the next growing season to the time those workers get to your farm. And again, you don't have to be very detail oriented about the forms you have to fill, but more or less walk us through that process and talk about whether you use a firm or business to complete the certification process, what paperwork you need to prepare, and the general things you need to consider related to housing and transportation. Just give us a little bit of an overview. And since Jackie was talking, let's turn it to Joey a little bit. Joey, we're not wanting the specifics, but give us the general process from the time you plan to bring the workers until the workers get to your farm. And if you can mention, if you're working with an agency, what agency you're working with.
I do work with an agency. It's NAC, National Agricultural Consultants. I think they're out of South Carolina or one of the Carolinas, I think. But I usually start with two guys. I usually, I get a total of 8 usually, and I start with 2 because I sit with what's called a carousel setter. I only need 2 to sit with it, and I start with 2, and usually June I'll get 1 or 2 more guys in, and then I'll get the rest in July, sometime middle of July. But
Excellent, Joey. And prior to bringing those first 2 workers, I guess you communicate with the agency about
yes,
the
ma'am.
paperwork,
Yes, ma'am.
and then housing and transportation. I'm assuming those details are worked through the agency. Am I correct,
Yes,
Joey?
ma'am. That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, perfect. Um, Dalton, how about you? Tell us a little bit about the firm and business you work with and a little bit the process before you bring them until they get here. And then once they get here, maybe the process like Joey, if you bring all the workers at once or a couple at the beginning of the season and a couple at the end.
Yeah, we actually use NAC too, which, like he says, the National Agricultural Consultants, and we'll bring 4 in when it's time to start setting the tobacco. Then we bring another 2 to 3, depending on how we have the contract set up that year. A couple of months later, and then when it's time to start cutting, that's when we get the total of 9. But we've been lucky enough to where we've had the same 4 that come at the beginning of every year. They've been coming for the past 4 to 5 years, that same group. So it's fairly easy to get them in here that first time.
Excellent. How about you, Jackie?
So at the end of the year, we kind of sit down and review the year and see what our needs for the next year is going to be, as far as are we going to need more truck drivers, more field hands, that kind of thing. And then we decide what guys we want to bring back, and do we want to bring any more guys on. It takes about 75 days for your paperwork to be processed. So we put that in the beginning of December, and our workers arrive March 1st, and they're here until December 15th. So
Is there an agency you work with, Jackie? Did you
yeah,
mention
we
that?
work with AWMA.
AWMA. Okay.
All right. So given the very many steps you need to follow before you can bring those H-2A workers to your operations, can you tell us a little bit about the challenges that you have faced with the H-2A program and any strategies or best practices that you have used to overcome those challenges? And we'll go back to Joey.
You had to start with me. Let's see. Any challenges? Well, I've been getting the same guys for the last 16 years now, so pretty much I've been lucky that way. So
So you've kind of worked through those challenges when you first got in there, and now that you've been in the program for a while,
right,
you kind of greased all the wheels, and it's an easier process.
Yes, ma'am. I've been doing it so long now. It's just, I don't know, it gets easier.
All right, Dalton, do you have any challenges with the H-2A program and things that you've overcome?
I wouldn't really call it a challenge, but at first it was when we first got the guys. You know, some of them don't want to come back; they just want to do it for a year or two. But you know, the ones that have kept coming for 2 or 3 years at a time, when somebody decides they don't want to come back, you know, they'll have a brother, a cousin. They'll be like, and they'll just tell us, "Hey, can we bring him in?" And we go from there, try to see if they got all their paperwork and everything cleared to come, and then if they're all good to go, we'll bring them in.
Okay, and Jackie?
Yeah, I agree with the guy said. It does get easier the longer that you're in the program. We definitely faced more challenges our first year just with the language barrier and worker relations. We had requested a couple guys that we had names for, but then we also just kind of blindly got a few guys, and we learned that um, everything runs smoother if your guys are more from the same area. Uh, that when they're from different regions and stuff, sometimes they just don't mesh well. One of the guys told us one time that there is much strife among countrymen, and that was true. So in the last couple of years, we've gotten more workers from a certain area in Mexico. But other than that, the language barrier, trying to explain, how to do things, that's definitely a challenge that Google Translate helps with. And just time, once you start training people, they start learning and teaching the other guys, and so it gets a little easier. And then one of the other challenges I would say would be driver's licenses, getting everyone we need our guys to all have driver's licenses because they're not all going to the same field and working together every day. They're kind of spread out, and that's been challenging.
So, given that somebody new walking into the H-2A program or looking at it, you guys talk about how nice it is to have that agency work through the paperwork, but what about the cost? How did you guys say, hey, this is totally worth the cost of getting into this program? What helped you make that decision? And I'll start back with you, Joey.
What made me make that decision is to go with the H-2A workers. It was just so hard to find Americans that wanted to do this kind of work. And these guys, they come in, they don't complain. They really work hard. They're good workers. And that was just my reasoning for doing it. You just can't find the help here anymore.
So you knew every night when you went to bed, the next day you were going to have workers there to get the work done.
Right. That made a big difference because in the past we had been, when I was cutting tobacco before I started the H2 program, one day you might have 3 or 4 show up to cut, and then the next day you get, might be 7 or 8, but you just never knew if you was gonna have enough to get the job done that you needed to get done.
Yes. So Dalton, how about you? What kind of made you overcome the cost and complexity to get involved in the H-2A program?
Yeah, kind of like he was saying, the year before we got our H-2A guys, one day we would have 10 people show up to help, and the next day you have 3 or 4. I mean, that just puts a lot of stress on you, knowing if you're going to be able to get everything done you need to get done. And It was just it was some farming neighbors around here. They had been doing it and they talked really highly about it. So it was it was an easy choice to go with that.
And is that how you came across NAC? You were just asking neighbors kind of what they used and what group
yes,
they. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. A bunch of the people.
Yes, ma'am. Me, I'm
That's what
the
they go
same.
to.
Okay. All right, Jackie, what kind of made you take the plunge into the H-2A program?
Yeah, same thing. You just can't find American workers that are as dependable and hardworking as the crews that that come in through the H-2A program. They come to work, and that's what they do. They work hard, and they don't complain, and they don't quit. And so,
Yep.
yeah.
And then did you get a recommendation from neighbors for AWMA, or how did you come across them?
Yeah, same. Neighbors recommended AWMA.
Okay.
Okay,
All right, I'll turn it over to you. Go ahead.
no, so we're getting to the end of this episode. This has been a very entertaining episode. And so Amy, why don't you wrap us up with the last question we have for them?
Sure. So let's finish this episode by asking each one of you your advice that you would have for other growers, other farmers that are thinking about using the H-2A program as a source of labor. So Dalton, I'm going to put you on first. What advice would you have for other growers that are thinking about the H-2A program?
Yeah, the first thing I'd probably do is you need to look at all your fees before you bring them or think about bringing them over here. Your cost for the housing, your utilities for all that. You're going to have to, give them a vehicle. You need to think about all your fees, but if you want a reliable source of laborers, that it's really worth it.
All right. Thanks, Dalton. Jackie, what advice would you have for other farmers and growers that are thinking about using the H-2A program?
Yeah, I would say to take a good look at what kind of labor you're needing, and are you going to be able to keep them busy and use them in different positions, and how are you going to manage that, and who's going to manage your H-2A program, because you really need a designated person that sort of manages that program, not necessarily day-to-day operations, but just the whole thing in general, making sure everything is taken care, all your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted, and that kind of thing.
I think, Jackie, you make a good point. So I'm going to ask all three of you, in your operations, do you have one person that does those human resource type activities with the H-2A labor, or are you each doing it yourselves? Like, someone that's doing the payroll, making sure their hours are turned in, taking care of the I-9 forms and all that paperwork that's required.
Well, for me, it's my wife. She handles all that. So
Okay. I hear that a lot.
Yeah, for us, we kind of keep up with it mostly to ourselves, but we have one fella that comes. He's kind of the barrier for us and all the other laborers.
All right. Jackie, who takes that role in your operation?
I do.
Okay.
I do all the things pertaining to the H-2A workers. My sister-in-law does payroll, and we do all that through QuickBooks. And so we got them set up with that. And there's a few extra steps that we do have to take pertaining to their time records and stuff that we do. And so we kind of share that responsibility.
Okay, and
Very
let's
good.
continue with the advice. I think we're missing Joey, right? On what advice would you will give to anybody who is thinking about using the H-2A program? What advice you will give to those farmers thinking
well, I
about
would
using?
just say if they're having trouble getting help to do what they need and done now, it's the way to go. It's an extra expense, but it's well worth it in the long run to me. And just it depends on their needs. But if they're having trouble, getting help to do what they need done, it's definitely been worth it for me.
Excellent, guys. So this has been has been very informative. I hope our audience and other farmers thinking about the H-2A program can learn from all of you. We really appreciate the time you took to chat with us. And in the next episode, we'll have again Joey, Dalton, and Jackie talking specifically about housing requirements of the H-2A program.